And Charlie is a dearer, friendlier kind of name than Mike.
Right.
Because there was no Michael in Iowa.
Oh, there wasn't?
No.
So everybody calls you Mike growing up?
Yeah.
Oh.
If
Do
I
people
go-
call you Mike now?
If I go back, yeah, anyone.
Only there.
Only there, and I have one kind of friend for life who just insists on it.
I cannot see you as Mike.
Right? I don't
At all.
really. I hardly respond to.
How would you describe your relationship with your mother?
With my mom?
Yeah.
It was really good. My mom was my number one supporter.
Yeah.
My mom had an unshakable belief in me, and the love she gave me was unconditional. Always was. I was so blessed. I see it now as a grown-up out in the world. I see how many people did not have that as the base.
Yeah, I think that's common. It's
From-
more common to have the opposite.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know.
from which they, because for me then why would I not have confidence then and go out in the world and do things?
And your father?
He was just a quiet Midwestern man, kind of a blue collar Midwestern man, a farmer's son, and not a quiet, easygoing person who didn't have big ambitions. He was not a reader or anything like. He and I had very little in common except our blood kinship.
Did he support you? Like, was he accepting of you?
Yeah, I think he
Generally?
was mystified by me.
Okay.
I think he was not a terribly verbal person, so I think he was mystified to have a chattery little
Right.
boy in his life all those years, who then went off to be a chattery, artsy grown-up, and then when he began to see me on his own television set, I don't think he quite knew what to make of it. You know, it would be like,
What did he say?
he would just say, his nickname for me was Charlie. I don't know where he got that.
remember. You said
He
that.
would say, Charlie, it's really something. I don't know. He would say the thing that people from his part of the world say, which is, I don't know how you learned all those lines. Well, Dad, you just do. It's part of the deal. If you can't do that, then you can't have the part. You can't be on TV.
Right. I can picture you because you are also so articulate and you have such a great vocabulary. You were probably like that from the get-go, right? When you were a little kid.
Yeah, I think I was.
Do you remember people telling you that?
I remember people telling me that I had a funny voice. I remember my Aunt Sue putting her hand over my mouth when we were singing hymns in church. Because my pitch was not that good. It's much better now.
Oh, boy.
But I guess I was talkative. I would talk to strangers. And I know where I got that. I got that from my mother. Because my mom's one of those Midwestern ladies, when she comes to New York City, there are no strangers. She stops and engages in conversation with whoever it is, the doorman at the hotel or a homeless person or shopkeepers, people standing on line at
Yeah. I love that.
the ice cream vendor. You know,
Yeah. Personally, I love that.
it's sweet, but it can also get you into situations.
Like what?
You know, people then, sometimes people have an agenda or want to sell her something
Okay.
or tie her up for a while or show her a great opportunity that they know about or tickets to this or that. But no, it's fine.
But so you got that from her. That's
Well,
what you took from her.
Yeah.
Yeah, or not took.
But partly I'm projecting on her too. I realized how callow I was when I came to New York City from Iowa. And it took me a long time, I think, and this is not necessarily a plus, but to get a little more of a New York shell on me and to not walk around open-mouthed with wonder or looking up at the tall buildings or all those things you do when you're from Des Moines and not from here. and it can make you a target.
Yes. I still like to look at the buildings.
I do too.
I
And-
know you can't, but
now
I'm still drawn to.
But now I know how to deal with whatever New York throws at me, or I feel like I do.
Right, you have
For the
street
most part.
smarts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the best of both, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and your father called you Charlie, and he called your mother
Clyde. God, we had this conversation.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes, and because I remembered Charlie because my son's name is Charlie, and then we talked about the fact that Charlie is a good guy. Like all the
Yeah, that's
Charlies
right.
are good
That's right. Yeah.
because they are. But I remember you saying that you weren't sure why, or why you didn't tell me the other things about your parents. But I do remember you saying that, which is interesting.
I don't know why you didn't name me Charlie. Well, I don't think he felt he had a vote. I think in that, in 1954,
Yeah.
The husband of a good Catholic girl kind of left the naming
Right.
to
Right.
the mother of the child.
So I have this weird thought that I feel like, we all name kids before they're born. Not all, because there are certain cultures that don't. And I feel like that's the way to do it, is wait until you see the personality. Like, I bet he started calling you Charlie after you were existing.
Probably. Based on
There was something Charlie-ish about you.
whatever he observed about
Yeah.
me as a person.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that would be good
That's
to
a
just
pleasant
name people.
thought.
I don't know what you call people before, or, if you don't do that, what do you
Right.
call your baby? But I don't know.
And Charlie is a dearer, friendlier kind of name than Mike.
Right.
Because there was no Michael in Iowa.
Oh, there wasn't.
No.
So everybody calls you Mike growing up?
Yeah.
Oh,
If
do
I
people
go-
call you Mike now?
If I go back, yeah, anyone.
Only there.
Only there, and I have one kind of friend for life who just insists on it.
I cannot see you as Mike.
Right? I don't
At all.
really. I hardly respond to it, but
When you said Mike, I had to think what you were talking about for a
Mike,
second.
yeah.
I was like, what is he saying, Mike? Because I didn't picture that. To me, you are Michael, but you are a Michael, I think. Michael is appropriate
I think
for you.
so. I think it's all right.
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
But when you grow up in a little farm town in Iowa, you don't keep
Right.
the name on your birth certificate. There has to be a shortened form of that.
Yeah. Well, my son's name is actually Charlie on his birth certificate. It is
Oh.
not Charles.
Oh, great.
He is Charlie. That's it.
Oh,
so
that's
we have
great.
to explain that sometimes. I
Yeah.
remember, sometimes people will call him Charles,
Yeah.
and he has to correct them. It's like the opposite of what you'd think. It's the opposite of I'm Michael, not
Yeah.
Mike.
That's good.
I'm Charlie, not
That's good.
Charles. All right, I have some things I want to run by you because I feel like sometimes I did this with one other person once, and I feel like it's super interesting because of your way of seeing things. I feel like you're a very thoughtful person. I'm going to give you some sayings, and let's talk about if we buy these sayings or not. I don't mean I shouldn't have
Okay.
even prefaced it at all because it's not as complicated as it sounds. All right, all you need is love. Yes, no, maybe. What do you think about that expression or that saying? All you need is love.
It's not my favorite Beatles song.
Okay.
And I think it's too general to have bite, if you ask me.
Okay. Should we go more specific? Familiarity breeds contempt.
Is it Shakespearean? I can't remember. It's apt, but it's only half of a dynamic. If there's no spice or newness in a thing, let's say a work of art, or let's say a performer,
Uh-huh.
then you risk disenchantment. But I think in relationships and stuff, familiarity is what you crave.
Mm-hmm.
Familiarity breeds your bond with your
Uh-huh.
loved ones, spouse,
Right.
lover.
I
what
think
have you.
also, I'm just going to put my own take on it. I feel like it depends on the person too, where some people really appreciate novelty in life and others appreciate routine and predictability. So maybe in some ways it might apply more to based on what your perspective and your personality is.
Yeah.
Are you a novelty person or are you a stability person?
I subscribe to that quote from, what author is it? Is it a French author? Is it Balzac? Someone who said something on the order of, be quiet and orderly in your life that you may be wild and adventurous or in your work.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I have it in the box. I keep my watches and cufflinks in. I can't shoot. How can I not know the exact quote? And
you've seen it a million times.
But anyway, I subscribe to it. I think I like, we live a quiet, orderly life at home. It's a comfort, and I think it is, just like my mother's love, it is a thing that gives you the confidence and the courage to go out into the world and do something daring, like a play in front of a live audience.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, for somebody who's a perfectionist and likes things controlled or controllable, you really chose a career that is not.
As if to push the envelope of my very own sense of control. To do the high wire act, to see if I can.
Although,
and you can if you're a super careful preparer.
But interestingly, you've had these really meaty jobs, roles, where you are on these, at least the most predictable type of show that you could get, right? So it's like, you're not going from project to project. I mean, you are to some degree, but less so than you would if you were, you're getting these, what is it? Stable. They're stable. They season after season on network television. Do you still call it network television if it's Paramount Plus? Yeah, I would call it network.
It's a CBS production.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes to that.
But network pretty soon won't be a word.
Right. People will be like, what? Net what? But yes, you have, I think people would kill for that kind of stability, right, that you've had 3 times at least, right, for that. And then you still get to do the other projects on the side that you're passionate about. So, but you're not only doing that so it doesn't have to stress you out that what's happening now or next, right? It's kind of like a perfect, you've controlled the perfect career for yourself.
To some extent, it's inadvertent, unintentional. But yes, I've had good fortune to play solid roles that stayed interesting to me and to audiences too, I think, over a long time. And it has been stable and regular, and I haven't been out in the cold trying to figure out an angle for auditioning like I used to have to do.
Yeah. So I'm really racking my brain, and you're kind of stumping me on why you feel like you need to have control over things and be a perfectionist. I can't figure out, based on what you're telling me about your parents and everything else, I don't know where that would have developed. And it could just be a personality trait. But usually it's in response to something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It might have been because I date my sort of obsessiveness to my early years in New York when I was a magazine illustrator.
Okay.
And the kind of drawings I was doing were very particular and very detailed, and they required an absolutely clean workspace and pencils as sharp as a scalpel, and I couldn't work if there was any housework left to be done in the apartment because I was working at home.
Oh.
So it had to be tidy, dishes done and put away, laundry done. Now I can work. Now there's nothing distracting. Now I don't need to drift away and do some housework. I had to corner myself to be focused. And I think I sort of held on to that as maybe a work method.
What were the illustrations exactly? Why were they so precise?
They were little black and white drawings done with a very dark black pencil that wasn't erasable. So I had to be careful.
Okay. Did anything happen where you weren't once and something devastating happened?
Oh yeah, I had many of those kind of spill something on the finished art, or slip with the pencil and make a line, a dark black line through a space that was supposed to be white. Just that kind of thing.
But that would have to happen. That's part of.
And I think in a way to make that workspace for me so controlled was also a way to control my anxiety about being in this huge teeming city where the likelihood of my success was very low.
Now we're on to something.
Yeah.
That could be it.
It could be New York.
Yeah. Could be New York that did it to you.
Could be.
Yeah. So why did you decide to come to New York again?
An ill-considered romantic relationship.
Oh, that's right. And then it didn't work out, and then you moved to St. Augustine?
Well, yeah. The relationship that brought me here ended, and then I moved to Brooklyn and started drawing pictures, and then I had some other relationships there, but one of them took me to Florida.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it was an ill-conceived one that brought you to New York. So it wasn't you that was coming to New York. For you, it was
not originally. I would not have been brave enough, but I followed another person.
So how long was it before the relationship ended?
We stayed together for 2 years, which is about 18 months longer than made sense.
Okay, I feel like now my analysis is going to be that it was that whole period of time of you coming to New York. 18 months out of 24 were uneasy, and it was time to. You were probably nervous and anxious.
I was always nervous. I had barely enough money to get by, to pay rent. When that relationship actually broke up.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how I was going to make rent anywhere. I got the cheapest apartment I had ever heard of in Brooklyn, and that was my ticket out to the beginning of my life as myself.
Isn't that interesting? So you still wanted to stay?
Yeah, because some of the life here was really fun. And my various retail jobs, I made good friends. We had fun times. We would go out, go to the movies, or go have Chinese food or something that didn't cost a lot of money. So that was all good. And what had I to go back to? Not really anything in Iowa.
Right. Do you remember how much the apartment was? Do you have the number in your head still?
I do. It was $140 a month.
What? Was it your own place?
On 7th Avenue in Park Slope.
That was quite a steal.
Yeah. And like everything else in New York, there's a story, My landlady was a kind of crazy lady in the neighborhood named Mrs. Nelson, and she dressed exotically. And you'd see her on the street, and I think a lot of people thought she was maybe a crazy person or maybe had nowhere to live or something, but she was just frugal. And she looked it, and she had this building, and she rented, and some of my neighbors were really strange people, but it was a story. It was a great story.
I would imagine you can just, because there are so many characters here too. Aren't there so many characters?
Like nothing I had ever, there's nothing. I don't know 3 people in Iowa that were as strange as 10,000 people I know in New York City. They're just, everybody's sort of a regular person.
Right.
So regular. But I didn't want regular.
Yeah.
I wanted to be where the characters were.
Yeah. And you are where the characters are. And you're a lot of the characters yourself. You're taking from the characters that you've met and seen.
Yeah, that's right.
And created all those characters out of all of that. There are some characters in California too.
No question.
They're different characters.
Yeah, they are.
How would you describe the difference?
I respond to the characters in New York City better than the characters in LA. And I think it's because they seem like they're figures out of literature or dramas or comedies or something. I can cast them in my mind into a narrative context. It's a little harder for me to do in LA. I don't know what it is. It's just taste, partly. I'm interested in the kind of urbanness of the characters I made here, and less so into the back to the land kind of people or exotic spirituality and religions that you run into that I think of as a more West Coast thing. Of course, it's everywhere.
Yeah. No, but I do feel like that too. I used to notice that when I would go, because I record in New York, but when I would go to LA a few times a year, I'd go for like a week and I'd tape a bunch of shows. And I would notice that this like mystical thing, this topic or whatever, it was common when I would be out there. It was like a lot of my guests would bring things like that up. And then I would notice this is really California.
I was always outside of that. So I was not a natural fit for California. I love zooming around LA at night in a car and going to, the restaurants and music clubs and stuff. That was all great.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about it too. I like going out there. I love it. I do feel like when I'm back here, when I come back though, I'm like, I'm with my people again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I see what you mean. There's a lot to, it's that, I don't know. I don't want to judge the whole state of people or whatever else, but I see what you're saying where you would feel like, but there were more people like you there too, right?
Of course. Yeah.
But just not the majority, maybe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We had lots of good friends there, and we had great, funny people to hang out with, and all of that is good. But you have to drive a lot,
right,
to mingle with your friends.
Right. I do feel like something I noticed. I was just there last week, and I did notice when I was there that it does seem like there is this community there of like the entertainment world. It does seem much more of like a network or a web or something more than it is here. I feel like, and maybe it's because I don't know, because of who I was with last week. I'm not really sure, but it does seem like here everybody's a little bit more doing their own thing while still knowing each other and having their friends. You know what I'm saying? But it's less.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I have a different angle on that. Because I have at sometimes been part of the New York live stage community.
That's the different.
Nothing's tighter than that one.
Yeah.
And everybody. In that world, it's small. In LA, there's no theater community. There's showbiz, but that's bigger and more spread out. And showbiz in New York is big and spread out too. But as a club, the New York theater seems to me the tightest that I've ever experienced.
And truest, probably.
Probably.
Right. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. And there are some people in New York who I have had on my show who I've talked to, and it's that same. They know each other, and they're all part of that community. It's Jessica Hecht, and it's Griffin Dunn, and Yul Vasquez, and Eric Bogosian, and am I naming some of the names?
Kate Burton.
Kate Burton.
Whenever I think of who should be the Duchess of the New York Theater, I think Kate Burton is a good choice. Even though I don't think she lives here anymore. Maybe she does.
Oh, really? Well, that's
but talk about somebody who knew everybody.
Okay.
But if you do enough plays in this town, you pretty much do know everybody.
Right. True. And that's the nice thing about New York, too. All right. We love New York. It's been established.
Yeah.
All right. We have to close because you have to leave in a few minutes.
Oh.
So did we not get to anything that we should get to? We'll save things for next time. Well, there'll be a third show.
No, I think this is a great conversation.
Okay, good.
And a lot of surprising conversation.
I have to tell you, I was a little bit intimidated before this. You know why? Because I remembered how great our last conversation was.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, shoot, can I replicate the quality of that conversation a second time?
Yeah.
This was totally different, but I feel like we did in a different way.
But equally great. I mean, responding to those, what do you even call those quotes you read? Are they aphorisms?
I don't know. When I looked at them, I got them. I did it for Alan Cumming. I'll tell you exactly the details. Alan Cumming was coming on the show, and I felt like he'd been interviewed a million times.
Sure, he has.
And even he has a website that has like every question anybody ever asked him done. He'd written a book. I'm like, I don't want to ask him the same questions. So I got this idea to look up these sayings, and I think I remembered it saying, I remember seeing proverbs, but I felt like that's not the right word, proverbs.
Well, they are.
Do you think proverbs is right?
Yes, not in the biblical sense, but
Okay.
yes, they some of those are proverbs, as you would find in a fortune cookie. in some cases.
Yes. Okay, so what about those? You were saying I cut you off. So what about the?
I thought that's a good starter
Okay.
for someone that's opinionated like I am.
Right. Well, that's what I thought. I was like, Michael will be great at responding to these because you're gonna have interesting perspective on it because you
Yeah.
have a very interesting perspective. So I appreciate that.
I'm going to look up that quote
Yeah, look
from
at
the
that
French
quote.
author
Okay.
because I think it's meaningful. I don't keep many quotes around, but that one I keep.
A good quote is a good thing. When it really resonates, you feel it like viscerally. You're like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You hold on to that.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do another interesting but different conversation the third episode of Michael Emerson Comes to Really Famous to
Okay.
talk to Kara.
We must.
We must. Thank you for this.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure.
It was fun.